Well, hello, everyone. Welcome. It is great to see you. I'm Rick Fuller, the director with ICC of Speaking Opportunities and some of our ancillary services. Just give me a wave if you can hear me. I'm looking at several of you. Christy, okay, good. You can hear me. My audio is good. We've got a full agenda today. I'm letting people into the room. Please keep yourself muted, but I will give you a moment as we go through to hear from you on some of the things you're doing to adapt to the NAR settlement, some of the other challenges that we have in the industry right now. Very, very excited to have you here today. This is the Executive Leadership Mastermind. Did you hear me say leadership? And I want to make sure that we're on the same page. Most of you are leaders or you're leading real estate teams or organizations, but some of you might be individual agents and you're leading your clients through this process. That's a leader too. A buyer or seller that's navigating this changing market, you're in a leadership role. You have an administrative assistant, a virtual assistant. If you are working with a lender, you've got a great lender partner, a great title company, you're in a leadership capacity. The real estate agent has always been the quarterback of the real estate transaction. And so today I want you to know, as we talk about executive leadership, I'm talking to you, whether you're an agent with just one admin or transaction coordinator, or you're one of the agents on the call that have hundreds of real estate agents that are looking to you to lead them and guide them through the process. So that's what this is all about. Our calls are going to go maybe 45 minutes to an hour, and we got a lot to cover. So I'm going to jump in. Many of you know I have been out of town for just a little bit. I was in Paris, France, and at the Olympics. This is my family at the Olympics. You can see on the corner picture where we're at the Stadium de France, watching the track and field. You can see a picture of my daughter with one of the Olympians at the airport as we're flying back. Our family picture there at the Eiffel Tower with the Olympic rings. Then you'll see that we were one of 7 Americans amongst thousands of Frenchmen watching both male and female, women and men basketball, where Team USA dominated. So we were very proud of that. And so one of 7 Americans amongst thousands of Frenchmen, it was one of an incredible experience. And there were 3 lessons that I took from this. And one of them I think really applies to you. And then we're going to jump right into some of the topics. But the first one is you got to represent your country, but you learn in that environment to respect the countries around you. Yes. Like they all came and they all represented, and we love our country. We represented, you can see by the photos. And yet I also respected the people that were there and their representation of their company and their country. Number 2, every one of those athletes prepared. And some lacked perspective. I saw 250-pound wrestlers with crocodile tears going down their face because they lost the wrestling match. And I questioned whether they had perspective of what this event was really all about. They prepared. Did they have perspective? And the third thing is every athlete that was there, every team that was there, every country planned, but then had to adapt. We're watching the men's gold medal match between Team USA and France. And during this event, I can remember turning to my family and saying, I haven't seen Steph Curry at all. Halftime. Many of you know he came out at the second half of the game and had one of the most incredible basketball second halves of all times. One of the most incredible gold medal matches that the Olympic sport has seen in basketball. He had a plan, and at halftime they adapted. He was almost non-existent in the first half, but in the second half he had to adapt, and he did well. I mention that because you and I are going to discuss a plan today. You and I are going to discuss what it's like to lead people through these changes, but you're going to have to adapt. And the reason you're going to have to adapt is because you and I are going through a storm. How many people here, and you can put this in the comment section if you like, how many people have been in the business for a long time? How many people have been in the business for more than 5, 10, 15, like me, over 20 years? You've never seen, and I've never seen, a market like what we've gone through. And if I were to describe it in one statement, I'd say you and I are going through a season of uncertainty. And what I mean by that is you and I are going through some uncharted territory. There's a lot of uncertainty. You got the NAR settlement, which we're going to talk a lot about how you and I lead others through the NAR settlement, the challenges associated. You and I are going through times of rate fluctuation. Every time the Fed chair meets, Jerome Powell, we're wondering what direction the rate is going to go and what mood he's in and what's going to happen to both the stock market and the Fed rate. You and I are going through times of uncertainty with inventory, starting to see some inventory come in the market. But honestly, we need a lot more. We're still way behind in inventory. You and I are going through a national election uncertainty. And this brings a lot of uncertainty. And what happens in uncertainty is that people just don't engage. They don't move forward. Leaders tend to stick their head in the sand. Consumers tend to not make purchases. Agents tend to not move forward with confidence. And so a study was done that took a look at what took place during the great global pandemic, during COVID. And they identified 6 things, looking back on it, that leaders could do, 6 key components that leaders could do and did. And when they did this, they led effectively during those times of uncertainty. And how many people here know that the global pandemic was a time of great uncertainty in the world? A lot of leaders made big, bold decisions. Other leaders were fearful in their decisions. You and I could talk for hours on political decisions that were made and whether they were right or wrong. I'm not here to debate any of that. What I am here to tell you is a lot of your fellow agents and my fellow agents, a lot of leaders dug their heads in the sand. And that approach didn't work. So they went back and they studied the 6 things that the most effective leaders did during that times of uncertainty. And this is what they came up with. They said that the leaders that won during times of uncertainty during the global pandemic, they learned to be comfortable being uncomfortable. They learned to be comfortable by being uncomfortable. They learned to communicate more, not less. They learned to let go of perfectionism. I'm talking to somebody on this call for sure that's holding on to perfection. They learned to not go it alone. And they learned to have that perspective, kind of zoom out of their current situation to really understand where they're at in history and whether they're on the right side of history. All that to say, these were the 6 things that these leaders did that were most effective in the global pandemic. And as you and I are navigating what I call that trifecta storm, the NAR settlement, the rate fluctuation, and then this national election that has just been crazy. As you and I are navigating it, you and I would be wise to lean upon these principles that others have established in their business that help them lead in times of uncertainty. So this is a roundtable. I'm going to open it up for some discussion. It's not a monologue. Let me give you some thoughts first, and then I want to hear from you and how you're navigating this. We do have over 100 people on this call live, and it will be recorded. It will be sent out to you, as well as our NAR settlement scripts. You'll get a copy of those. They'll all be downloadable. The first principle I want to go over with you is learning to be comfortable being uncomfortable. Learning to be comfortable being uncomfortable. How many people know that there's a lot of uncertainty? And where I think that we live in this current state, on this date, August 21st, I think you and I live in the messy middle. Here's what I mean by that. I think that most real estate and leaders, especially if you're on this Zoom call, you're plugged into ICC, you and I know the rule changes. You and I know them up here. Well, we know that you're going to need a written agreement before you tour property. We know that. We know that you're not going to find compensation for a real estate agent as a line item on the MLS. We know that. Those things have been well-versed. We've done webinar after webinar after webinar on those things and how to navigate. Here's the disconnect. Can you communicate it? Can you communicate it to a buyer? Can you communicate it to a seller? Leaders? Can you communicate it to an agent? Can you take the complex and make it simple? General Colin Powell, you say great leaders are great simplifiers. So we need to fix the disconnect between what we know. We know the rules. We know the guidelines. We know where the guardrails are in our business, where we can and where we can't go. And you and I have to learn to be comfortable being uncomfortable. When a buyer tells an agent, I can't afford to pay a real estate commission, does our agent have a response? Or do they go, and there's still that disconnect between the head and the mouth? Because I think that when we teach our agents and when you and I practice these scripts and dialogues, we're going to be able to say something like, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, have you ever been to a doctor's appointment? Of course you have. Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, what's the first thing they do when you go to the doctor's appointment? Did they not give you a clipboard as you walk into the lobby? Some secretary sitting at the front desk gave you a clipboard. And on that clipboard, you signed all the paperwork saying that they're going to submit this to the insurance company and they're going to pursue other options, financial plan. But ultimately, as a patient, you're responsible for your doctor's visit. We've all signed that, yes? Is it any different working with a buyer today? Matter of fact, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, you're going to be responsible for compensation. However, would it help you to know that when I write an offer on your property, I'm going to make a request to the seller to cover all or the majority of my real estate commission? Are we comfortable with those dialogues? Are we comfortable with the dialogues when a buyer says, I'd like to look at that property. I've never been required to sign that agreement. Are we comfortable to simply say, that's because the agreement was never required before, and now it is? Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, go ahead and sign here so we can get out and look at the property. We need to fix the disconnect between the head and the mouth. Here's the other disconnect. It's between the heart and the mouth. Here's what I mean by that. How many people on this call have saved their clients tens of thousands of dollars in writing an offer? How many people have saved their clients thousands of dollars in a request for repairs or a low appraisal? I would venture to say we all have, yes? We've all saved our clients thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. But can you communicate that? You know, in your heart of hearts, your agents know in their heart of hearts that they're worth the commission, that they'll be compensated. They know that they've saved it, but they have that messy middle. They're disconnected from the conversation. They don't know how to communicate it. What if we were to communicate something along the line as, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, on average, I save my clients X or Y or Z amount on their purchase. In other words, hiring a real estate agent doesn't cost you. It's not hiring a real estate agent that costs you. So the first principle I want to cover is that you and I have to learn in times of great uncertainty, you got to be comfortable even though you're uncomfortable. We got to fix the disconnect in our mouth from our head and from our heart on how we're going to communicate this message to both the people that are looking to us to lead them, but also look to the people that you're talking to, your buyers and sellers, so you can communicate this clearly. Now, I've given you just a few scripts off the top of my head. There's dozens others. We're going to send you our NAR script that ICC put together on how to do all of these things. But these are the things that we need to be focused on and become a very, very high priority to feel comfortable being uncomfortable. I'd like to hear from just one of you. And so whoever's the quickest one to kind of unmute yourself, what part of these scripts, whether it's the head to mouth, knowing what you know and being able to communicate it, or actually feeling that what you know to be true and being able to communicate it, do you feel that you or your organization need to tighten up a bit? What say you?
Rick, I'll share that one of the things we've been talking about this obviously since, October really. And we've been beating it with a dead horse and talking and telling and telling and telling. And every Monday in our huddles, every office meeting, every training that we have to talk about this. And it wasn't until a couple of weeks ago till we started having the conversations with our clients about the new changes and we saw the forms, did we start realizing that we understand it.
Yep.
We just cannot articulate, right? So, but then in articulating it now as we're practicing and we're role playing and doing all of those things, did it make the heart understand that we really do know enough to articulate it? So that kind of came in steps. And it's still coming.
But it is, Shauna. You know, when I was at the Olympics, none of the Olympians was it their first time on the high jump or the pole vault or the first time in a boxing ring. Not one of them was it their first time. They were all practicing before they got to the grand final. And when you and I meet with a buyer or seller, when you and I are meeting with real estate agents, we've got to practice these scripts and dialogues. We've got to fix the disconnect between our head to our mouth and our heart to our mouth. Because I think we know it and we feel it, but we cannot communicate. That's where we stand on August 21st. And that's where we need to say, if I was to go back a few months ago, I'd say we didn't even understand it. There was so many moving parts and so many different pieces, and we didn't know how it was all going to play out. Today, we got to learn to be comfortable and being uncomfortable. Thanks, Sean. Appreciate that. Let me go to the next one. I got a few more questions for you. Friends, here's principle number 2. You and I have to communicate more, not less. You and I have to communicate both with our sphere of influence as well as with our agents and the people we're leading, more, not less. Remember, you're growing a real estate organization, not mushrooms. So don't leave them in the dark and feed them manure. Okay? Be a communicator on this topic. I hope you are having consistent team meetings. I hope you're breaking out your organization, if you have a large organization, into small groups. In other words, I hope that each your admin group is meeting, your ISA group is meeting. I'm going to mute everybody here. That you're meeting in small groups to be more effective, and you're navigating this. But today I want to give you 5 scripts that I'm suggesting that you record, that you upload them to YouTube. And then when your agents come to you and say, what do I say? They can watch you, their leader, communicating this message. This is not something that I'm telling you and we're not doing. We're actively doing this. I'm going to give you 5 scripts that you should record. You can screenshot this if you prefer, or you can make some notes. But these are the 5 scripts we suggest that you record. This is in addition to your team meeting. This is in addition to your small group meeting. This is in addition to your Zoom calls with your agent. These scripts should be recorded so they can watch them over and over and over and over and over again. These scripts should be available so you can just, when they call you, you can just send them a text. Say, hey, watch how I would respond to this question. Here are the 5 scripts we suggest that you produce. And frankly, we suggest you produce them right away, ASAP. Here's number 1. Get the script. I cannot afford to pay for a buyer's agent. How many have already heard that? Home values across the country are at a record high. We all know that. This is a major concern for your buyers. The media has portrayed this in such a way where the buyer has no idea who's responsible for the compensation. Is it the seller? Is it the buyer? Is it the agent now working for free? We need to be able to articulate that script. Here's another one. We think you ought to produce a video responding to, is a written agreement really required? Or is it just a guideline or a suggestion or a preferred business model? Okay. You and I know on this call, it is a requirement. So you need to be able to communicate that. You need to be able to communicate it clearly and concisely. I gave you one of my scripts earlier. It wasn't required until recently. Now it is required, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. Would you like to move forward? Here's another one. Your golden ticket through the conversation, especially with a seller, is your estimated seller's proceed statement, or whatever you call it in your market. Some of you call it a net sheet. Some of you call it a closing statement. You should be bringing to a listing appointment several estimated settlement statements. Go to your favorite title company. Go to your favorite lender. They all have them. You don't need to create the system. The system already exists. But you do need to walk into a listing appointment and be able to say, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, the how changed, but the what did not. Meaning, we should still expect an agent to be a buyer to be represented by an agent, and we should still be expecting that somehow, some way, they're going to ask for compensation. And I've taken that into consideration on your seller net sheet. Here's one at price A, here's one at price B, and here's one at price C. The estimated seller proceeds statement is your golden ticket to helping you articulate and communicate what the seller ought to expect. Do we have a written script that you can now send off, and you videoed yourself, and you're now forwarding off that YouTube link to your agents, communicating the estimated seller proceeds statement. Here's another one I think will be very valuable to you. Have you recorded your buyer consultation? Have you recorded your buyer consultation? Now, if you're part of ICC, you have access to AMP, that agent management portal. I literally shot a new video on our LIST, lead in, investigate, show, share, and tie down process that you can go through in a buyer consultation. Download that, watch that video, watch me do the video, watch me do the buyer consultation. And then you create your own, send that to your agents. So they see you articulating a buyer representation agreement or a touring agreement or a property showing agreement, whatever you call it in your market. Make sure you have that. You should have a listing consultation video. Record yourself on a listing appointment, even if it's a faux listing, even if it's a role play. You're meeting with an agent in the office, your admin. Bring your lender in, say, hey, I want to role play this and I want to record it. You record what that video. You don't have to get into specific compensation, but I do want to hear you talk about what it's like to decouple, how you're decoupling the commission and the listing appointment and not trying to bundle them, which got us into all these challenges in the first place. Okay. Here's another 5 videos that we think will be very helpful. This will be a great place for you to screenshot this particular slide. Here's number 1, how to include the buyer's agent commission in your offer. You do realize that there's a lot of agents that aren't going to have this conversation. But what happens if the commission is not readily available? What happens if it's not on their website? What happens if you call the agent and your buyers are writing an offer, or your agent's representing a buyer and they say, I don't know if a commission's available. We never got a chance to talk about that. That was something that never came up in the listing appointment. What does it look like technically in your market to include that commission? I'm of the position that regardless of whether there's a commission offered, you ought to write an offer with your commission agreement. You're going to find more and more that the commission agreement is going to accompany a purchase agreement instead of being identified in a listing agreement. I personally think we're going to see more decoupling conversations, and sidestepping the MLS and just going to a different website to find the commission is not going to be a long-term solution. Get used to, whether it's for purpose of clarification, whether it's for purpose of just establishing your compensation, get used to including with your offer how the buyer's agent is going to get paid. This should be a technical video. This is where you put it. This is where you find the form. This is how you fill it out. You as your team leader going through and creating this video. So when your agents call you this week and say, Rick, how do I fill this out? I don't know if they're offering a commission. Hold tight. I'm sending you my video right now and they can watch it. Here's video number 2, technical aspect, because you got to communicate more, not less. How to ask for a buyer's agent commission when it's not offered. Here's number 3, generating a seller's estimated proceeds statement. What's it like to go to Fidelity Passport or whatever your favorite title company is, log into their website and then download that net sheet? How do you communicate it? How do you draft it? How do you change and give them 3 different prices with 3 different scenarios? So when you leave that seller listing appointment, you've clearly articulated the expectation that they're going to participate in some of the commission in the future for the agent that's representing a buyer. How about this one? Explaining the buyer representation agreement. This should be a video. It doesn't have to be long. This can be 3 to 5 minutes, but it's you as a leader communicating the buyer representation agreement so that your agents understand how to communicate it. Do know that in 2023, 65% of agents did not use a written agreement. So if you have an agent says, oh yeah, it's not a problem, it's not a problem, it's not a problem, and all your agents in the office are like, I got it. Understand statistically they don't got it. Understand statistically that 65% of real estate agents did not use a written agreement consistently with a buyer in 2023. So a video from you as their leader explaining how to use that written agreement, powerful tool. And finally, explain buyer's agent compensation at the listing appointment. How do you do that? What does that sound like? How do you communicate what they can expect. Do know that statistically 9 out of 10 buyers were represented by a real estate agent. 9 out of 10. They are likely going to continue to see buyer's agent representation. You're going to hear me say this phrase all the time, and I'll give you more detail about it later, because the what did not change, only how we go about doing what we do. So get a video that it's explaining it. I want to hear from you. How will you improve your organization communication this week? I need one person to unmute themselves. I'd love to hear from you. I got too many people in the room to see all the hands that are going up. So just unmute if you've got one of these. It's like, man, that's the one I'm going to implement this week. I'm not letting the sun go down without that video being produced that I can forward to my agents when they have those questions. What say you?
I'll go, Rick.
Who is it?
Sandy Simmons.
Oh, hey, Sandy, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good. What say you?
I'm going to go with number 5. So I think it's really important because no matter what we do going forward, that we're decoupling. You don't want to couple them from the process. And I think that's going to be the biggest hurdle for the agents to get over. You have a buyer agreement, a listing agreement, but right in the middle comes the offer and the purchase agreement. Somehow you got to take that representation and get it to the middle.
Sandy, I'm in agreement with you. You and I, you do realize, Sandy, that this is not the last lawsuit that we're going to see. There are additional lawsuits that are out there. You and I establishing the best practices, it's not just circumventing the MLS, but you and I establishing best practices to identify and negotiate our commission and decouple them is not only what we're going to see in the future as a requirement, we're going to see the Department of Justice require this. Sandy, thanks for sharing that. Explaining the buyer's agency compensation at the listing appointment, critical, so that the seller doesn't think, oh, so you're telling me I just got an X or a Y% increase on my sales price. No, 9 out of 10 buyers were represented by a real estate agent. Those agents don't work for free. We need to consider offering them compensation or consider that they're going to write that in their offer. Therefore, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, don't go spend that X and Y amount of money on your new car, on your landscaping, on painting, on whatever, on a property, because you need to itemize it. Later on, we need to be able to look back and say, as a friendly reminder, here was my initial proposal and what I thought your estimated proceeds were, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, and taking that into consideration. And here's a refined version of this, what looks a little closer to what the actual numbers came in. And they should be very close. They should be very similar. Thanks, Sandy. All right, let's go to number 3. I know I'm moving along quick. Just got so much to cover with you. All right, so here's the third principle that they discovered after looking at the top leaders and how they handled COVID is they did not make quick conclusions. They did not draw quick conclusions. So a principle that you and I ought to live by is that you and I should avoid making quick conclusions. Here are 6 of them that I think are very dangerous, and I've heard every one of them. When you and I make a quick conclusion and say, after the election, real estate sales will go, that's a quick conclusion. You don't know what's going to happen after the election. It is true that 9 out of 11 last election sales have gone up. There's no guarantee. And by you and I making those quick conclusions, we end up with egg on our face. We lose street cred with the people that are looking and trusting to us. Here's the second one. When the Fed meets, rates will be X or Y. If anything, in the last 12 months, we have learned that the Fed is very unpredictable. The beginning of the year, I saw a survey of 20 different lenders. 18 of the largest financial institutions anticipated that there would be 3 or more rate drops in 2024. We're in September, almost September. We haven't seen a single one. Hopefully we'll see some later on. We just can't make quick conclusions. We need to make sure that we understand the state of the market And these things are out of our control. How about this? Home values are going up or home values are going down, or by the end of the summer, the inventory will be higher or lower. How about this one? Buyer won't sign a written agreement. In my experience, the only time, and I mean only time, that a buyer is not wanting to sign an agreement, it is because either they're not ready, they're not able, or the agent wasn't comfortable in communicating. Those are the three reasons. Now, if they're not willing or they're not able, you shouldn't be out touring them homes anyway. And if the agent can't communicate it, hello, that's something we can do. We can do something about that. Yes. So the seller doesn't want to pay a buyer's agent. We need to be able to learn how to communicate that. Don't draw that conclusion. Even if you talk to an agent and they said, we didn't determine what a buyer's agent's compensation is going to be at the listing, write your offer. They say, we don't have it listed on another MLS, or I don't know what it is, or I haven't had a chance to talk to the spouse or, the co-owner of the property. Write your offer. Regardless, write your offer and include your commission agreement. Fair enough? Okay, so I've given you 6 quick conclusions to avoid. They're all pitfalls. Those who made conclusions about COVID and the pandemic and, hey, this is going to last a week or 2 and hang in there, they turned out to lose credibility with those they're leading. Avoiding these conclusions will help you continue to have that credibility that you need to lead your organization. All right, last question I have for you. Of these quick conclusions, or maybe you have another one, which quick conclusion are you going to actively avoid in your lexicon, in your vocabulary? What say you? Bueller, any, what quick conclusions? We've got over 100 people on this call, 115 as we're recording this at this moment. I know that you have some conclusions. You've made some assumptions that you need to kind of rein in your communication. Of the 6 I've given you, is there one that's like, man, that's me? I've been putting too much emphasis, too much assumption. We all know what happens when you make too much of an assumption.
Okay, I just found a way to unmute myself.
Susan, what say you?
So I'm 2 things. The election, I've got people calling me about that. I say, we're still struggling to ever get close to the demand for shelter. And I don't think that an election will impact that wild demand for the fact that so many people are unhoused and or renters. So I don't really know that it's going to matter. The folks that are going to leave if one person gets elected or the other are people that are not the ones that are desperate for housing. So that shouldn't even bother people. And then I just also wanted to mention, I love the fact that I feel like a gift was decoupling. I've used that as like, okay, you guys have been a couple, right? All right. So when you decoupled, what did that look like? And so that's all we're doing. We're just, the buyer's agent and the listing agent are not a couple anymore. And it's just a more direct route. And that's what decoupling means. And then it's just like, let's move on to what really matters, like your gutters are full, et cetera, et cetera.
Well said,
and
Susan.
I'll mute myself.
Yeah, well said, Susan. Here's what we've learned is the market in your life, like when you're ready to buy a home, is so much more important than the real estate market. Yes or no? How many people here wish they would have bought a home 20 years ago? Every person's hand, or 2 or 3 or 5 or 10. Your market in your life takes greater precedence than the real estate market. When you begin to uncouple that one, you realize how important it is for people to own real estate, and that owning real estate is still the American dream. So these are 6 conclusions. I'm sure we could create 60 quick conclusions to avoid. The best leaders who navigate change avoid quick, assumptive conclusions that lead them to a lack of credibility to lead their organization. Do I have opinions on every one of these? Say yes. Do I have an assumption on every one of these? Say yes. But I am very mindful that the moment I begin to go in a certain direction, it doesn't establish credibility. I weaken my credibility. All right, let me go on to the next one. So avoid quick conclusions. All right, here's the deal. You and I have to let go of perfectionism. These new scripts, these new dialogues, these new processes, you and I have to let go that they are now implemented perfectly. Here are 3 ways I want you to let go of this perfectionism idea. First, stop looking for a perfect market, but to promote the opportunities of today's market. How many people know that in their community, there's a record high home value today? That's an opportunity. Our clients have gained equity. How many people know that interest rates have dropped a full percentage point, sometimes a percentage and a half? These are things we can promote about today's market. Here's what we need to be thinking. There's no good market. There's no bad market. There's just different markets and what you and I are going to do with those markets. We need to stop looking for a perfect market. One day the rate will be this. One day we're going to, all this stuff's going to settle, and look to promote the opportunity. Some of your real estate agents need to know that the active inventory is piling up. Some of your agents need to know that expireds are a great opportunity today. Some of your agents need to know that the home value has climbed so much that reaching out to expired 2 years ago is an opportunity to get them into contract now at the price that they wanted 2 years ago. These are opportunities in today's market. We got undercurrent with short-term rentals and investment properties and fractional ownership that all exist as an opportunity to promote today's market. Here's number 2. Stop looking for a perfect market. There is no good market, bad market, just the market you're in and what you're going to do about it. Look for progress in the market. Look for progress in the market. If you represented a buyer and seller on a particular street, and you've now represented the only seller on that street, you are the number 1 agent on Main Street or Elm Street or that particular street. Let's go from the number 1 agent on that street to the number 1 agent in that community, that condo complex. Let's make progress to go from the number 1 agent in that condo complex or that community to the number 1 agent in your city. Track this, monitor this. There's still credibility that comes with being the top agent in your local market, being well-versed and helping others being able to accomplish their goal of buying or selling real estate. There's still an opportunity for us to benefit from that credibility. If you're number 1 in the city, let's get to the number 1 in county or the number 1 in your state or the number 1 in your region, whatever it is, but don't focus on perfection. Let's keep making progress. You grow through these changes. That's going back to being comfortable, being uncomfortable. Leaders have to let go of perfectionism. I can promise you that you think there are certain things in your organization only you can do. I'm also telling you that's a lie you're telling yourself. Somebody could do it. And if they could do it 80% as well as you, and it's an administrative task, if it's a marketing task, if it's a transaction coordination task, if it's a concierge task, you should hire somebody to do it. Let go of perfectionism and aim towards progress. Stop looking for a perfect market. Look at positioning in the market. Where do you need to position your organization? Where do you need to position your agents? Do you need to kind of change the title of your real estate agents to inventory specialists? Is that something that you need to look at because we need inventory specialists to find? Do you need to recategorize or reframe your business to be, off-market listing agents? Like we find properties that are off the market. Position your agents, position your organization. Never forget that the opportunity in a changing market, the silver lining, maybe the one benefit when a market shifts is the ability to gain market share. There's somebody in your market that has a lion's share of the market. I hope it's you. If it's not you and it's somebody else, the way they gained it was not when the market was steady. It was when the market shifted. It was when the market changed. That's when they gained that market share. That's when they went from the number 1 in their city to the number 1 in their county, or from the county to the state, or whatever. They positioned themselves in a changing market, in an uncertain market. So as the market began to kind of land onto its feet, if you want to use the terms, kind of a soft landing, they were positioned as their top agent in the market. They positioned themselves to gain, not to lose. All right. I am going to ask you one more question. I want to hear from somebody here. Do you need to focus your organization away from perfectionism to promote for an opportunities in the market, to progress? I'm just going to make steady progress. I'm just going to get better every day. I'm just going to advance in my market. Or positioning. Are you going to focus your energy on positioning yourself, your organization, and your brand to gain market share? Which of the three most resonated with you? What say you? Go ahead and unmute yourself. Love to hear from you. Last opportunity. I'm looking around on the call. Sean, what say you? Mr. Sean Cardoza, Legacy Real Estate Group.
Shoot, Rick, you put me on the spot. Thanks.
Of course. Do you feel like your organization, I mean, I know you're like growing and expanding rapidly in your organization. Do you feel like shifting from the perfect market, looking to promote the current market to create progress in your organization, or to position is where you as a leadership team need to drive your focus and attention to?
Totally. I totally feel like the biggest, I don't know what the word is for it. The biggest problem that we have here is that everyone they're still stuck on what they saw during COVID. And for those of us that made it through a crash back in 2008 and 9, and we're working on selling real estate during that time, we've seen the ups and downs. We understand the ups and downs. We understand that this could be the new norm. It's been a new norm for 2 years. So, we got to mold and mesh to it, and teaching them how to realize that they've got to actually continue to work. This is a job. This is what we do. We nurture relationships, and nothing's going to work out perfect. But we got to do what we do. We continue to grow. We continue to work through what we're dealing with. These are the cards we play with right now. We can sit here and gripe and live in that world of complaining, or we can get out there and embrace it. That, hey, this is a great opportunity. Like, I like how Brian always says, you take opportunities to pass people up in the curves. This is an opportunity right now within our own brokerage, continuing to train and teach and mold and agents to understand that, hey, this is your opportunity. This is your opportunity. It's not going to be perfect. Move forward sloppy, and enjoy the ride, because this is a new. It's a great opportunity. We all have such an amazing opportunity right now if we focus on growth.
Promote the opportunities in the market.
Can I ask a question?
Create progress. Yes, go ahead. It'll have to be quick because I've got 2 more slides.
I've actually really enjoyed my post August 17th because I am chatting with agents and we are just directly talking to each other. I kind of love it. Like, I'm not hating this at all. I find it lovely.
Because you had a plan and you're adapting, correct?
Definitely had a plan.
And you're adapting.
Tammy Savage was my coach. I knew it was coming.
Tammy's a rock star.
Nice to be like you built this community of co-workers. We're co-workers. And now we're just going to keep working together, and to see it and as anything other than that, I find odd. Like, I'm so confused why everybody's so upset. It's not very different or hard.
Well said. All right, let me move on. I've got a couple more I want to run by you. Here's the next principle that we discovered from those who went through COVID, leaders that were effective, is they didn't go alone. Okay? They didn't go at this alone. And I'm seeing several of you also raise your hand. You have questions. I'm going to hang out for a few minutes afterwards. You're welcome to hang out and ask me any questions you might have, or the group as well. They didn't go it alone. One of the biggest mistakes real estate agents and leaders made in the global pandemic is they buried their head in the sand. When they heard shelter in place, they sheltered their business, they sheltered their finances, they sheltered their mind. And then they came out of this and they didn't have any opportunities. Don't go it alone. I've invited Brian Eisenhower, Brian Donnelly. We are in Nashville, September 5th and 6th. We're in Las Vegas, November 14th and 16th. I'm seeing several of you are joining us. This is what I call small group support. This is not our typical summit where we have hundreds or thousands of people there. This is like a small group. It is maybe a dozen to 15 people that are in a conference room, a hotel room. We're having a conversation about what's look. It's 2 solid days. It's a complete download. We are in Nashville, Tennessee, September 5th and 6th. We will cover how to respond to the NAR settlement. We will cover how to position yourself for lower rates and how you can benefit from this. We can cover how you promote current opportunities in the market, how you gain progress. We're going to cover all of these things. We're also in Las Vegas, the 14th and the 16th. If you want more information on either of those, go to the iccregionalsummit.com, iccregionalsummit.com. Small groups, very much very intimate group. We will have the Iceman there himself to be able to kind of make sure that you're on the right track. Those that have attended this before, it has been of incredible benefit, and they've walked away with a game plan to advance their business. This is kind of a small group. If you don't need the small group and you want virtual support, go to our AMP product. Now, many of you are already our ICC coaching clients. Great. You got access to a lot of this stuff for free. Okay. I'm not trying to sell you on stuff. I'm just trying to give you the tools and your resources so you don't go at this stuff alone. I've recently built a course all about how to use AI to get more business and how to convert that business. I cover ChatGPT. I cover proximity. I cover Google Gemini. I covered all these different tools and resources, how to use them to write ebooks, how to use them to write Facebook ads, how to use them to better negotiate with your buyer and seller, how to use them to better negotiate with the agent on the other transaction, to do it authentically. All of that is in this course. That's available for you. If you're not an ICC client, you can invest in this. This gives you virtual support. Our small group was in person, sitting around a coffee table, having a discussion, laptop in hand, about how to adjust your business in a small group setting. This one's virtual, man. Just download it. I think we have 30 plus modules, 33 lessons. It'll take you about 3 hours of video. You got 6 months to watch it. All right. Last one I want to give you. Don't go it alone. If you're here and you need to talk to somebody, I'm down to just a few minutes left before I got to wrap this up. I'll hang out with you for a few minutes, but if you need one-on-one support, if you need to have a conversation with a coach, do not go this alone. It's one of the biggest mistakes that people made in COVID. They went it alone. They isolated. Your ability to understand what other people are doing around the country to navigate some of these changes, this uncertain time that we're in, we've created a free coaching call opportunity. This is a free, it's anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes. It's on the very front page of the EisenhowerCoaching.com website. Go there. When you fill it out, say, Rick sent you there. You're going to have a conversation with one of our incredible coaches. Give them the biggest problem you're facing today. Give them the biggest challenge you're facing today. Give them the biggest struggle or uncertainty, or give them the thing that you're most pondering that keeps you up at night. Let them help navigate this. So whether you're looking at, I need small group support, I need a small group of executive leaders to help me navigate, we got that one. You want it to be virtual, we got that one. Or if you want to have a one-on-one support call, guys, we open this up for free. This is an opportunity for you to kind of take advantage of that. That's a free call. All right, last principle. And I'm going to try to bring this thing to a landing. The most successful leaders during times of uncertainty find a way to zoom out. Now, I'm not saying check out, I'm saying zoom out. You and I are in a tunnel, aren't we? You and I are only seeing what's in front of us. We're on the base level. You and I need to move ourselves to the balcony. You and I need to move ourselves to the mezzanine deck. We need to have a 25,000 foot elevation view of where we're at in history, where we're at in the real estate market, and where we're at financially with the value of owning real estate and the benefit of owning real estate. Zoom out. Some of us are so zoomed in. I love what was said by the last person. Like, this hasn't been the issues that everybody thinks it is. They're zooming out to have perspective. And what I would tell you is that today, buyers are still buying, sellers are still selling, and both of them still need a real estate agent. The average person now sells a home once every 10 years. It's the biggest financial investment that they make. It's the greatest wealth building tool in the history of the United States. It's an opportunity for us to navigate them through a very complex situation. Remember, the real estate market is not crazy. It's complicated. And as the market is complicated, it needs a professional to help them navigate that complexity. That's you and I. Zoom out. Remember, the what did not change, only the how. Will there still be buyer's agents? Say yes. Will there still be listing agents? Say yes. Will they still be compensated? Say yes. Will real estate continue to be the dream of home ownership, to be the American dream? Say yes. Those what did not change, only the how we go about doing our business. Never forget, we got to zoom out to capture that perspective. All right. If this has been helpful to you, I do these monthly. You can learn more about them at the EisenhowerCoaching.com under Executive Leadership Roundtable. We meet with a group of leaders. It's an opportunity to have a community, a group of people that are helping you navigate through these challenges. We try to bring you timely, relevant topics so you can take these as a leader and implement them for your business and grow and advance your organization. This is not, and I repeat, this is not for everyone. This is for leaders. This is for executive leaders that are leading the organization or aspire to be an executive leader. All of that's available. Would be happy to have you join that group. And I want to thank each and every person for being on this call today. I've given myself about 4 to 5 minutes to answer any individual questions. I'll go ahead and stop the recording at this time. And if you have an individual question, we got a few minutes to kind of cover them before we jump. Thanks everybody for joining us today at the Executive Leadership Roundtable here at ICC. Take care, everybody. So guys, I'm going to give us just a few minutes. I see most of you are hanging on. I have just a few minutes and I would love to answer any individual questions. I've already stopped the recording of this. You will get a copy of all the scripts and dialogues that I've given, and I'm going to take this recording and I'll upload it into the Real Estate Roundtable. But before I do, is there anybody who's got an immediate, urgent question that they need an answer to? I believe personally the smartest person in the room is indeed the room. And therefore I may call on a few of you that I know that have greater insights on a particular topic than I do, because ultimately I think the smartest person in the room is the room. What say you? Any individual questions before we wrap it up?
Rick, I'd like to comment. This isn't
Tammy, go for it.
Yeah, this isn't a question. It's more of a comment. And it was a discussion I had with a lender this morning. I think that the idea that you share with everybody about us being able to present multiple net sheets to our sellers so they can see multiple situations is critical. I think it's just as critical that we have lender partners that are in our court as buyers agents to start the conversation about compensation with our buyers as they're getting pre-approved, and to look at each individual situation in advance, not at the moment of writing an offer, and say, hey, if this is what you want your mortgage to look like, this is what you can afford. This is what it looks like when you are able to have a listing agent compensate the broker. But if not, and you have to pay 1, 2, 3, whatever the percentage might be, let's readjust your numbers and know what that looks like so that not only you, but your agent can go at your search prepared and ready to find you a home.
Cammy, I couldn't agree more. It is the solution to having the conversation with your seller specifically. It is the one document that helps you articulate that what didn't change, but
Right.
how and when might have, and that they should anticipate it. And that 90% of all buyers for the last 30 years, Tammy, 90% of all buyers worked with a real estate agent. And if we choose not to provide compensation to a real estate agent, understand you're getting a very small slice of the buyer pool available today. So if the ultimate goal is to create a higher net proceed than 9 out of 10 sellers, that's what they want. That's also why I'm a big advocate of when an agent doesn't get back to you or doesn't respond, or you don't know the commission on a property, you just write a written offer. Remember, they're required to present all written offers and include your compensation agreement.
Right.
Because they may at a listing appointment say, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I don't want to offer compensation. Let me think about it, whatever. But when they get an offer and they're able to provide that net sheet, they may say, that's exactly what we're looking for. Let's take that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we have to remember, we represent both sides, obviously, and we don't always, when we're representing buyers, we're not in control of what that agent said with that seller. And so to be prepared on both sides, I think is critical.
Whether you do it because you're not aware of the compensation, write an offer with a commission built into it, or whether you're doing it just simply for confirmation, they are both of value. And my suggestion is that's part of your script when you meet with a buyer. Mr. or Mrs. Buyer, on any offer that I write for you, I will include my commission agreement to cover all or part of my real estate commission. Would that make you feel a little better? And the vast majority of them will say, man, that makes me feel a lot better. Kind of like the health insurance. I go into that doctor's office. I know I'm going to be responsible, but ultimately I know the insurance company is going to pay for it. I believe ultimately, I know that compensation is going to come. It might come from the price of the property. It might come from a concession. It might even one day come from your lender. I think all of those are very, very possible. Might even come from the listing broker. Regardless, your ability to be able to submit that with every offer for purpose of clarification or for purpose of establishing your compensation is going to be critical. Thanks, Cammie. I got time for one more. That's it. Anyone else? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Everybody, I hope to see you in Nashville. We're packing our bags and flying to Nashville very, very soon for our 2-day summit, or back here at the Executive Leadership Mastermind, the 3rd Wednesday of every month. Thanks everybody for being a part of it. Look forward to seeing you next time. Take care, everybody.